beautiful beings, and welcome to another Evolve Us video cast. And today we have Doug, who is, first of all, I just want to say a man, but he's an author and a coach, and he's passionate about exploring the hero's journey. And he's had a rich life and also a challenging one. Going from growing up as a man, trying to navigate what does it mean in this world to live, to being involved in fraternities and really bringing in a level of transformation to the fraternity system across the US, to grow it into a space for men to come into themselves and really discover how they can be their best selves, and spreading that out across the US, and going into the journey of corporate and technology, and the world we get sold where to go into, only to come to a place of depressiveness, and then coming back to a sense of mission and purpose, and wanting just to really live his best life, and the yearnings for a man to be on purpose and on mission, and for love and connection. And so welcome, Doug. Thanks for being here. And I'm really stoked. I'm about to jump into a beautiful conversation.
Powerful summary, brother. That was incredible. Quite the listener. Thank you for seeing me.
And it's a big part because your journey resonates so much for me. Having gone to the US to being a fraternity, and the corporate and the misery, and so I see a part of me in you. And that's one of the core intentions for having this conversation is we don't know each other very well at all, but it's just this yearning in me to connect with men who are living from their heart, and just to explore together, because of all the male wounds that have been there from high school or corporate, of trying to get my resources over your resources, or compete for women, or try to be the most macho, whatever it is. And it's just like all parts of my being want no part in that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. A part of me has managed to stay true to, I think, not being in that, and yet I'm still in some of that corporate environment energetically. So I've found my way to navigate it, but I've maintained myself in the energetics of it, which in and of itself is toxic. So it's certainly a powerful place for me to move from. So for me, that leap is to just leave it entirely, not be strategic and continue to navigate it, but to just simply step away and open up a lot more space. So
I would love to explore that, because when you shared you joined a fraternity, and you really stuck true to yourself and your values. And you may have not joined the most popular, or the one everyone was going for, but you stuck true to that, and then you created from that. And then how you kind of speak about the workplace now, and knowing there's a part of you that is your truth, and then there's some maybe parts that are disjointed. When you shared that, there was a part of me that's inspired by that, because when I was younger and joining at college and joining fraternity, I went for, my vision was on which is the best, and I didn't have a strong sense of self formed yet. I was very much looking outside of myself and influenced by other people. And when I was in corporate, I got so miserable that the thing that was holding me back was the connections. Or I didn't know all my friends. My whole uni degree was for this job, so I didn't know anything outside of that. I didn't know myself yet, but I had to leave because it was too miserable. I had to leave. So I'm really curious in that for you, that strong sense of self, and then you kept true to that in the fraternity days, and then just how you're navigating a workplace with your kind of values and alignment. Yeah, I'm curious about that for you, if you have anything to share around that, and just what you feel is alive for you in that exploration right now.
Yeah, I definitely was still an 18-year-old kid in college that wanted to, hook up with girls and be with all the cool kids and and I had just gone to Catholic school my whole life. So, I remember receiving invitations to the top the top chapters. I got bids from like the ones that the girls were telling you to join, that kind of thing. And I essentially went into freeze, response, and I delayed that decision as long as I could, and then I joined this kind of island of misfit toys that ended up being what myself and a few others transformed into, a really high vibrational container of men. And in that process, I was feeling into how empty I felt if I had chosen the top chapters. It just something didn't land for me there. And I think it helped that I was sheltered in that regard, because I could feel what I was tapping into if I joined the smaller group that felt more aligned to my heart. So truly, my heart was wrestling with my mind, and I ultimately chose the smaller group, and it worked out. But where the wounding was for me was worthiness. I never felt worthy in my own power and in my own gifts. I needed that support system to put my love of myself into something bigger than myself.
Mm.
And then I continued to play that wound out. And then when I was working for my national fraternity and starting up groups and doing all these things, it was quite sensational and amazing and powerful. But I burnt myself out because I was putting all my love and energy into this thing that wasn't actually for me, because I was putting it in front of myself. And then, I eventually, from that burnout, I grew tired, and I went with opportunities that were more comfortable and that I could manage. And then over time, that's where depression and these things kind of crept in. But yeah, it's been a journey of returning home to my own worthiness and value and love and believing in myself, and realizing that I didn't grow up having a lot of support and love around believing in my, potent, creative, contemporary, progressive gifts, because that's what a lot of what I was bringing to the table was just new and different. And
Yeah.
Sometimes there's men out there or women out there that have just really magical talents and things, and most people can't see it. And what's important at the end of the day is cultivating the ability to see and love yourself, right? And that was a big miss for me until I got into this work, right? And then that's where things started to really open up. And but yeah, it was I would say I wrote my book because when we're 18 or we're 19, we're still in a period of personal development. I think if you do go to university, if you do have the opportunity or the privilege to go to a space like that, it's a great time to experiment and to step into some unknowns and to find like-minded people and experiment and find yourselves in that process. And for me, that created that initiatory period of life, always created a something to reflect back on and ask questions and dig deeper. And once I felt like I could see enough of it in its holistic truth, then it was like, okay, well, it took me 10 years, but then, I got to a certain point where I'm like, all right, I can write about this now because I can extract the universal wisdom, right, of what had occurred energetically. And then, it was cool to look back and realize that things like men's work or initiating ourselves from our adolescence into adulthood, these are all things that have been essentially lost to the West, because the Westerners, by way of expansion, have pushed some of these more harmonious ways of being to the curb, to make room for more and more and more and more, consuming more and more. So it's cool to realize that I was running counterculture and essentially tapping into elements of culture that our society has been essentially deprived from. And so, having that kind of awakening has been quite empowering to see exactly the energetics that I'm in by being in these more corporate environments, being in large companies, cultures like that. Really feeling into the lower frequencies of that. And then recognizing what's really out there, what I've already cultivated in certain moments in my life and periods of my life, and slowly but surely choosing more and more to step back into that.
And this just comes through. It's like, there's the word joy behind you on the wall as well. It's you're sharing there. It's like, giving the love out, or you're looking for it out, as you said, but it burns us out, and it's just like giving it in towards ourselves. And that's, for whatever reason, I've spent a lot of time in different industries, and one of the big things I see in the not-for-profit world is that, I literally spoke to a group the other day of leaders in there, and this is the common dialogue I hear: is corporate wasn't fulfilling. After a while, I got the money, but it just wasn't fulfilling. So I was looking for more purpose. So I went to not-for-profit. Or people go straight there early because they're looking for that meaning. But it's this constant giving out. Let me go help these people over here. And it may come from a beautiful heart, like it's a genuine heart, but it's the energetics behind it that the reason I see so many people who are not themselves or who are burnt out, because it's constantly helping others or burning out here versus kind of stopping and coming still and looking back through our own life and childhood and adolescence to understand the patterns and go, oh, I am worthy, as you said, like maybe I didn't have the supportive environment, or even if I did, just the human condition. I'm just hearing how important it is for people just to believe in others, how we can see the greatness in others and help, like support each other and just believing in ourselves. And because that energy just changes what we focus on, and I kind of get to this place of, if the world, David Hawkins, I don't know if you know the spiritual teacher David Hawkins, but he goes, we have all the data in the world to solve all the problems there are in the world, yet we don't. Like, you'd think the very primal problem of world hunger, like we have all the tech, all the data, but we don't. And we've got all the science. It's not about the science or about the thing. It's we're asking the wrong questions. We're focused on surface level, right? Because of our consciousness, essentially he goes to. And it's like if we all just kind of stopped, myself included, stop the hamster wheel, stop even trying to help other people just for a moment, that whole, new age paradigm of service, right? Service is the quickest way to develop. Service is the way. And it's like, hang on. And we just come back to ourselves, And someone said a really beautiful quote to me the other day, which is, and as I've explored the environmental sector as well, permaculture and environmentalists, it's like the solutions I keep seeing are, don't focus on solving global problems and being bigger and more, as you say. Focus on helping your community right in front of you. And then if you support the local shops, you build connections, you reduce the mental health things, And like someone said to me the other day, it's like the greatest service we can do is just give a shit about the person in front of you. And as a basis, for us connecting right now, it's like we're just connecting with man and soul. And I just feel curious to ask you, about the things that are so important to us as men and humans. A couple of these topics, like, family, the idea of family and marriage and children, like, are these desires and inspirations you have or don't have? And just curious to hear, like, from a feeling place in you as a man, like your heart, how does your heart tune into family and children and marriage and these ideas? whether they're true or not true for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everything that I've been working towards, particularly as of late, has a deep focus, almost like a North Star that points to that. Um, my story's epic, and my energetic can be quite epic because I sit on such a polarity of worlds. I come from the old world. I was parented by people that essentially took the same model of parenting that their parents had, and that was some parenting from like the 1940s after World War II. And I went to Catholic school with nuns, and I come from a very traditional old world way of living. Emotions are suppressed, heavy drinking culture, um, things like that. So to go full spectrum, to go on the journey, to come to the other side of being more heart centered and being more in my feelings, and unpacking all of that. There's a real clarity around the energetics of children and marriage and family. But to me, there's a movement here. There's an awakening amongst men and women, and it's creating the conditions for us to uh, essentially evolve our way of being in community, and that revolves around the child. So instead of looking at a capitalist model of hitting short-term profits and things like that to measure the health of the economy, it's shifting our perspective to measure the health of our economy around the health of our children. It's plain and simple, and creating conditions for children to cultivate more of their heart and their spirit and their freedom and their God-given gifts, in a safe space, in a space of love, nurtured by men and women that are in the work. Getting out of the boxes that we've found ourselves in the West, and out of the isolation and back into real community, a real interconnectedness. And so I view my journey and my path is stepping more and more and more into spaces like that, and helping cultivate spaces like that, lead spaces like that, hold space like that, so that not just any children that I may have or any family that I may have, but all the families around me are in that same have that same model of being, so that the children that come after me get to operate from the beginning in the opposite polarity of where I started, and have a lot more support in cultivating their just the potency of their gifts, And then I think a lot when we talk about the world's problems and things like that, I put a lot of faith in that, what that generation will be, because that generation will have been able to cultivate themselves from such an early age by folks like us that have managed to turn things around and do the work ourselves. And so it's kind of the big rebirth that we're in, is connecting to the people that are here to create the conditions for that. And I think you spoke of something that's important, which is coming into the right relationship with reciprocity, with money, and with worth. So striking that nice balance between the for-profit model of acquisition and getting everything that you need to be comfortable, versus the model of the nonprofit of giving, and making sure everybody else is good. It's finding that balanced approach with heart-centered people to essentially create a little bit of a heart-centered microeconomy where business, education, and family are all interconnected. And like I said, this all revolves around the child. That's the center of the community, right?
It's amazing. It's beautiful. You're speaking words that just pour right into my heart, what I feel, the desire for, as you say, microeconomy, micro community. And so many parts of me are wanting to step out of this global community because it's just, what do I need? It's just to be with the land, to really actually connect with it, right? To be in harmony with it, to grow food and harvest from it, to know how much I'm taking, to have other families nearby, growing up children that are connected to the land, right? You know, and to be able to go over to each other's for dinner and, make love freely and to create art and make music and when you put it in the essence of it's for the children, like to put the children at the center of the vision, you know, and as you kind of say, it is the work we're doing. Is I think of this a lot. Is the work I do on myself is the ancestral healing. It's the work that my dad didn't have the opportunity to do. It's the work his dad didn't have the opportunity to do. It's the work of all the fathers before who have been in wars. Whether it's Vietnam War, World War II, World War I, we go back to the days of bayonets, we go back to the days of swords where we had to shut off. We had to shut down, and so much in society says, men do this, women do this, versus just, kind of turning all the noise off. And I'm hearing it for you and me, so we can just tune into our true self, our heart, what's there, come back to our own worth without other people's ideas or things or distractions, right? It's whatever is in here, and I'm hearing this, it's from the heart as I'm hearing just the for the self, for future children, for, whatever it may be. And so much of the spiritual community is focused on service, when it's actually like, I've said the greatest service can sometimes be just focusing on our family. Like if everyone had worked on themselves to support their family, right? Like families grow up children without so much of the trauma and, the dads who are absent or, dads who have emotions they can't deal with, so that impacts the partner, and all this. And I'm going to read you this one line from the prophet on children that just so beautifully, speaks to children, because in the rites of passage and initiation work, you speak of, and I've done myself, it's like seeing so many parents' attachments, similar to, when they give the love out to service, the not-for-profit or something else. It's like so many of us have gone into parenthood for almost the same reason. And there's attachment and control, not love, not custodianship. It's like ownership. And there's this one thing here, and a woman who held a babe against her bosom said, "Speak to us of children." And he said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And they are with you, and yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, not tarries with yesterday. You are the boughs from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves the bow that is stable. Mm-hmm. And to come to a place of custodianship for the children, it's like, well, if that was true, then it's like, we aren't the ones that then choose from there. There's a trust and putting the self-belief, for the child to have it themselves, for them to create what the evolution of humanity is. To trust that the souls that land, through us are wiser than us. Mm-hmm. The next bit I would just love to touch on as a topic to explore for us is then work. And giving, or service work, as a man, it's like, what does this mean to you? And if you were to create like what, work truly was for you,
Mm.
what would that actually be? Paid, unpaid, just like a reality
Yeah. I
of
mean,
feeling
I'm
purpose.
navigating that right now, which is quite wild. But yeah, for me, there's a shift in moving towards working in ways that really make me feel alive, and that being a bit of a north star. And for me, that means doing a few different things, um, and switching off from having one job that has benefits and things like that to a more entrepreneurial way of living where there's sort of multiple sources of income, and essentially being able to navigate this world and be of service, like you're saying, be of service as in different ways as I feel being, as I feel I'm being called. It's funny. I had a couple conversations over the weekend that were spontaneous. So I was at a show watching some music with a beautiful woman, and I was being, just in my truth and being like, wow, I feel like we had an attraction when we first met, and now we're friends, and this is really cool. And it turned into this conversation around what she's looking to do in business, and then it turned into like, hey, I feel like I could actually support you as a business coach, and now we're exploring that. But just being in the energetics of truth with the feminine and that polarity, and then just allowing that to navigate, eventually organically business coaching came up, right? It's like, oh, cool. Or I was out celebrating a birthday with a friend, and I ended up catching a movie with another friend, and I was super late to meet this other friend for his birthday. And I texted him, and he was like, everybody else has left, but I'd love to catch up with you. You want to come out late and meet me?" And I met him late, and I sat down with him, and I was asking him what he was calling in for the year. And he was talking about love and dating and things like that. And I explored further, and to feel into what's missing. What does he need to call in? And essentially, he just needed to call in more polarity, and more opportunities to really be with the feminine and create that polarity and be in the masculine and hold space and things like that. And I was demonstrating that and showing that to him. And then again, it turned into like, well, maybe this could be like a 3 month container around dating that I could be of service to, right? So it's just I we all have this innate ability to essentially meet the moment with our gifts, is what it comes down to. And uh, it's cultivating the practice of stepping back into that, because I was in that. I've been in that energetic before. I went my whole time in college. I pretty much operated that way. In the earlier part of my career, I operated that way. Um, and it's just that permission to step back into that more and more. And then in terms of service, it's coming into reciprocity. So allowing what what we're serving or what we're giving to be fully received, right? And so to really be met energetically by what feels like an exchange that feels good in our heart. I'm collaborating with a friend to do some ecstatic dance type containers, and this friend of mine wanted to learn how to DJ for me. And I said, okay, well, what's our energetic exchange going to be, right? Are you going to pay me this or that? And it triggered him. He thought, because we were friends, that I would just do it for free. But it's just like, hey, it's it's that practice of recognizing that we have such value in our gifts, and that exchange is important to honor, in order to really honor what it is that we're serving, how we're serving. That's probably an area where there's a lot of pain in the non-for-profit world, is that people are giving so much but not receiving their worth in the process. And there's wounding around that. And so they're just stepping into these environments and allowing that wound to really fester and just continue to open up. And I know this from my own personal experience. I mean, like you were saying, it's like I feel like I burnt myself out from that world, and then I went into for-profit corporate, and now I've burned myself out there, and now it's coming in, and then I've stepped into this work, and I've come around full circle, right? And it's just like, okay, can I get into the practice of being in reciprocity? Because if I'm in reciprocity, if you're in reciprocity, and the other 100 people that we happen to live around are in reciprocity, children know nothing but the energetics of reciprocity, right? And that's a game changer. that's where we're all, I think, moving towards in this work, is aligning ourselves with people that are fully giving and fully receiving, and then building something on that kind of a foundation, right? And we don't need to save everybody, it's just one at a time, and we can find ourselves in this. It's gonna, because a lot of people in the spiritual community talk about finding that, eco village or whatever, and it's just like so many people are wounded in codependency, and aren't going to show up to the village and be in reciprocity, and that's going to cause so many issues. It's probably why, the hippie revolution and all that kind of had its awakening, and then it sputtered out. It's because of that, right? And so that's the
Yeah.
deep work. That's why, that's when I get on and have conversations with people like you, it's like, and I look at the big picture, that this is what we're cultivating, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, just it takes so much to be willing. Like, to give is easy almost for many of us, but to receive, even that story you share there about asking for an exchange, it's like, there are moments, it's like, in me, when I integrate those parts of me, it's like when I'm in an exchange with someone, you can feel when it's uneven. And, and there's parts of me, like, when I really see someone, it's like I want to honor them. So rather than them even asking me for something, it's like it's coming from a genuine honoring, right? Whether it's a financial exchange or something else, you know, and it is, what I'm trying to get to is I'm just in that reality now. And it's how, you imagine some of the old cultures, right, where they sit in circle, and the indigenous cultures, that's just how they saw, that's how they heard, that's how they were with the land, with each other, right? So it's like there's a relearning, or there's an unlearning, you can say, right, to take place for so many, for us to be in that. And I've really firsthand seen what you're talking about there, where I have been a part of communities that maybe identify with being quite hippie or really anti, establishment. And I just see them fall apart or things not go well because there are hidden blind spots and wounds that are playing out, which drew that cross section of community there in the first place. It is looking for a mum or dad, to save me, or or something. Yet being really anti-mum or dad, the establishment being, mum or dad, don't tell me what to do, and so, part of my own journey in that is I've had a lot of mourning because I've stepped into, I've had this vision and this inspiration. So I step into these spaces and then I go in and I'm like, disappointed, like it's not going to work. And so there is this timeline happening, as you say, of people around the world, microcosms, doing their work and growing and evolving and having these thoughts that it's going to take some time to come together. And I'm curious to explore with you, just, you mentioned polarity a number of times, on the topic of relationship, on the topic of sexuality, on the topic of that, the exploration there around polarity is, what have you witnessed or seen in yourself around polarity and the role that plays? There was a quote you mentioned earlier that really stood out to me, which is, when I'm maybe not fully in my purpose, relationships don't show up so much because maybe the women are intuitively reading that. And, my kind of looking is like, we're all very intuitive. And it's like, if I'm looking for a soul partner, if I'm looking for the partner of my children, there's just inevitable parts of me that are filtering in and out, certain possibilities of people because that person's not there, that person's not integrated there. So I'm curious to hear in your experience, as a man, if you're wanting to call in that partner, what are you seeing is important for you, in your journey, and just what have you noticed the role that polarity plays?
Yeah. Yeah, two things come to mind. I think healing from shame and polarity are the two areas of where I'm receiving the most medicine. So shame around sex. I mean, if you grow up, I think in a religion like Roman Catholicism, for example, you're going to have some of those deep wounds of being educated that sex is something that is shamed, essentially, and reserved to simply procreate, and that's it. Otherwise, suppress it. And so, um, I grew up in an environment like that, and I'm also Puerto Rican, and uh, I'm like Irish, so I got like the Celtic background. Puerto Rican, it's got Native American. I got a lot of wild sexual energy, like just innately in my body, and to have that really pushed down
Mm.
um, uh, has been a sort of force power that haven't been able to come into a real harmony with over the years. It's been on and off, and um, it shows up in relationships. It shows up in really great sex followed by not good sex, or really deep connections and experiences that may put me on, a really, really high bar. And then 2 weeks later, I don't meet that bar at all. I'm in the opposite. And so there's just a wildness and a weight, and there's almost an instability and a chaos that can show up in relationship that has, I would say, plagued me for sure, especially while I was in tech, because I wasn't cultivating my sexual energy all that well anyway. So when, I would get into partnership, and that would be in play, it was just, it was wild. So really practicing things like, I go to ecstatic dance, and I do certain things now to like put myself in situations to cultivate polarity with the feminine and be in the energetics of the flow, and to allow any shame and things like that to sort of naturally come up so I can move through them and create more of that. Because, my default growing up and just the background that I have was to get into sort of the friendship realm with the feminine. And so instead of, being across from them like you and I are now, face to face, really, in the energetics of polarity, giving, receiving, holding. And I'd be more, always sort of sitting next to a woman and talking to them as a friend, or holding safe space from that, like always making women feel safe, but not from that attractive energetic of really space holding, open heart, being in front of them, and just holding everything that the divine feminine is. The wildness of what they bring, and their connection to the earth. So yeah, that's been a massive like last couple of years for me, really cultivating that. And yeah, they're kind of they're interlinked. So I view that shame and that releasing of that. And really, I think that an important aspect of that for me has been cultivating that sexual energy in general. So sexual energy truly, it allows creativity to really flow at such a potent level. Yeah, it's just, to me, it's like this valve that I'm
Mm.
allowing to flow with more ease, not just kind of get built up and burst, and then, like just allow that to have more of a flow. And you know, over time, the shame and the wounding around that has made me at times be a bit more avoidant. I would say, or be avoidant. I'd be in situations where something would happen with a woman, and it would energetically feel like too much, and I would run away, or they would run away, right? And so it's just those avoidant patterns also like to play out a lot, and just, and it goes back to just trauma from growing up, where I saw that play out with my parents for sure. I didn't want anything to do with it, so I'd go into my room or whatever. But there is a piece of that I've been healing, and um, yeah, definitely, I think being in the presence of the feminine from a place of polarity and openness, and being and staying in the heart, and staying in our truth, and you know, um, yeah, while honoring it, right? It's just, that's just such a powerful, potent practice for where I find myself these days.
Amazing. And there was a bit there where you mentioned, like, when you're not in the polarity and when you are, and and you mentioned shame. What have you noticed when you're not in the polarity? You're like friend zone, right? You're not allowing yourself to be in the polarity. What have you noticed about that shame? Like, what is that shame specifically about when you've noticed you're not in that polarity? Like, what's the part of you trying to suppress? The part of you that's what?
Yeah, the part of me that's it's worthiness,
Mm,
and then the potency of my sexual energy. So those are the
mm,
two things. So one of them is worthiness, as in, oh, am I going to be good enough for this person or whatever, all that BS. That's definitely, that'll occur sometimes.
yeah.
But the other one is especially if I'm meeting like a feminine woman that's really in their sexual power, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm at a dance or something like that, this other one likes to come up, which is this. It's like a trigger. It's like a flashpoint where I'm like, oh, this is so, I can feel it. I can feel that they're bringing so much sexual energy, and I can meet them. But am I ready, or am I going to be, am I brave enough now? Am I, is, it's, I almost psych myself out, and I build up the moment to be much more epic than it needs to be. And that comes from, I mean, my parents met that way. My parents met like in an epic way. My parents met in 1979 on a disco dance floor in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Like a white man like asking a Puerto Rican girl to dance, and then getting her number and all that. Like, it could be a movie, right? So I grew up with this sort of facade of, oh, it's got to be this sort of epic thing. Forget dating apps. Like, you gotta just, when the magic moment happens, it's gonna happen, and you're gonna show up, and you're gonna be the hero and sweep the princess off her feet and ride into the sunset, because that's how you were. That's how you were brought into this world. That's how your family was started off. So there's those moments where I'm like repressed, and then I psych myself out. And you want to talk about like the most emotional experiences, I can definitely say without a doubt are those moments, because I can go throughout my day, and I might run into 50 women, and I might be in an amazing environment with a bunch of just, maybe at a festival or something like that or whatever, and nothing's happening, and all of a sudden, boom, some queen will emerge, right? And it'll just be this majestic moment of bliss and whatever, and my whole body, is just goes into this ecstatic, euphoric state. And yet there's also the pressure cooker side of it, and I almost enter sometimes into a bit of a freeze or whatever, and it's just like this heightened sense of oh, this is the moment, right? And it's been this deconditioning for me to release that and to kind of seek it out more, and to just be it and be in that energetic, and to take that energetic with a sort of abundance mindset and go, okay, we're here again. Now, like, let's play. Like, can we play in this? Can we be non-attached to this? Right? Let's not attach some story or some outcome to this. Let's just seek it, be in it, feel in it. Right? And I mean, it sounds sexy, it sounds fun, but this is like the work for everything that we do. Ultimately, is, do we have the courage to go seek the energetic of what it is we're most we're most uncomfortable in, right? And ultimately, that's what it is. It's just an uncomfortable energetic that I need to navigate and be in more of, to receive the medicine that's going to come out of it on the other side.
Yeah, beautiful. And I want to kind of bring one more topic in to speak to, and that is friendship, but specifically related. I mean, in my own life, it's like I've found it really easy to get along with women in my life, and then there's this now calling really to be with men, like brotherhood, this sense of brotherhood, and the old ways. And it's like, what is friendship? What's your exploration of that? and then specifically around friendship with women and friendship with men, and what do you yearn for? What's your desire there in those connections?
I love that. I think it kind of comes back to the children vision, right? It's, to me, it's who do I want to stand alongside with and co-create a new way of community, and when I have these amazing experiences with people I love, building that group up. I've definitely been in that energetic with men and women in college. I mean, we had a sorority that was really close with us, not sexually. It was because of the values that we held and the values that they held. And, it was really cool. Nice to have a group of women that felt safe and could, build relationships that were more friendly with us, in that way. And it's just wild how we've lost that part of our culture in some respect, right? And so for me, there's a beautiful dance there, and this is what I love about like going to ecstatic dance and stuff like that, because you can have those moments where you're in polarity and you're dancing with a woman and there's that sexual energy, but you're also going to just be friends afterwards, right? Like there's that, whatever. So it's interesting how I think there's a way where we can get closer just by playing with each other more, creating the right boundaries where everybody feels safe. The lines of communication are open, or we're practicing that permission to just be in each other's energy and explore. But yeah, I think grounding that in the vision, what it is that we're here to co-create, and I find myself more and more aligning myself with people that are here for that. And I've always been a visionary person. I can see quite clearly at times where things can potentially head, and so it's easy for me to align with people that I could just see they might not even see, right? They might not even see what I see for them or for us or whatever. And it's just like there's that trust or that inner knowing, and then it's just like, cool, am I going to choose to cultivate that relationship? And as a leader, how am I going to guide that towards the greater vision? I mean, I look at what I can see now on a level of like my ego is starting to really let go of just like, this isn't me seeing something. This is just me tapping into a higher level of consciousness and aligning myself with other people that can see into that level of consciousness, right? And whether it's a man or a woman, to me, there's such a natural high and love of when you tap into that field with somebody else and they're here for it. That for me really anchors friendship on a level that's a lot greater than, hey, we both like the same sports team, or we both come from the same area. You know what I mean? Like all this other stuff that's a bit more lower frequency. Like it's just it's finding those relationships where people are really here for that next sort of iteration of what we're here to do, and they're showing up for it. It's like, oh well, yeah, like. Like you said, on a soul level, it's like calling you. It calls me forward, right?
I just got, so much of my focus is, I can even just say it now, is helping others evolve. And yet, if I focus too much there, I miss the possibility of all the people, you're talking about similar frequency or in a similar space. They're already here.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nothing actually stopping a community from being formed in that frequency that would blow my dreams at. Like, what? Like, we can live this harmoniously, we can be this fully expressed, we can live with this, it's already here. But so much of my focus is always trying to help. It's like, oh, we need to do this, because when you mention safety, part of my brain goes to, oh yeah, in the fraternity and then the sister sorority, they come together. There's a safety because the men are together and there's not the distraction of the feminine energy and vice versa. And then you meet, and there can be a deep connection, and there is depth required. It's not journeying off here and meeting all this. It's like you go, there's some time and some connection, and right? And that's what's required rather than keep looking out. It's like to go on the journey a long time. And there's communities, there's a sexuality community in Australia where I felt the most safety in my body from that community, because everyone that comes there is there with the same intention, the same level of safety. We can fully be expressed in all areas of our life, and right, sexuality being a key part of that. Yet, um, there's a part in my being that wants that, but also a bit more broad spectrum. It's like people that also play music and people that also, are into nature, and it's like all the pieces. Now that community already exists. And then the part I'm trying to speak to is the part of me that's like, oh, I need to help others grow and develop so they can get safety in that and feel safe in that. And, we can't bring the person to sexuality yet because they don't even feel safe in their, in their own body or whatever it may be. But just, okay, there's doing this work to support others with safety. But it's like the soul's desire or whatever it is to live now in that community or that space, it already exists. And that's really what I just got from, you sharing. They're already all here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a convergence happening, I would say, at this time, right? Where there's pockets of people that are over time going to merge into a greater entity around this. And yeah, it's, I think for me, it's been navigating so much letting go and so much shedding. I mean, I've traveled a lot of the country, I've been in different places, I've cultivated different communities, and yet as I've come more and more in alignment with my soul and with my heart, part of what I've had to release is people that are not essentially choosing that as quickly as I am on my journey, and it's not a comparison game or whatever, but that we do find ourselves in as human beings in our body and in our individualness, and we get attached, and so we want to help our neighbor or help our friends or help our best friend or help these amazing people that I've had these epic experiences with, like your wartime buddies, whatever, that you've gone in the trenches with and done these epic things. You want to bring them to the next stage of the game. And it's like, I found myself definitely depleted and holding myself back of my own gifts by being attached to their outcome, emotionally attaching myself to them, trying to do things that are going to sort of pick them up and bring them with. And it's like, it's pulling the cart before the horse, and I've more and more shed a lot of that, and what that's created is a lot of room for like you were presencing is the people that are actually already here that are doing the thing. And I mean, I wouldn't know like 50 people in Australia if it wasn't for that, because that's how I ended up with some of the Gold Coast community people, Jad Deus and Abigail Bremner, like that whole circle. It's just like I started to more and more allow myself to have more and more space for that to come in. COVID actually was a huge reason for that. I was in Denver and I had my feet in two different camps. I had my one foot in the music scene, which is amazing out here. It's an incredible music scene out in Colorado. I love electronic music, just such great venues and artists, and it's incredible. And I was in that community, but that community is rooted in a lot of distraction and escapism. And then COVID-19 hits and shuts everything down on that front. And then I already had a foot in my spiritual practices and things. And I really just fully stepped into that camp totally, and really started to explore and get on more online festivals. And just, it was a blessing. And, it was a blessing by having that isolation and stepping into that space a bit more, because then I really kind of got to feel into just what I was kind of running from. And then it opened up more of that sort of community into my life. And yeah, it's been amazing. It's been really amazing. So, but it also comes with releasing people that aren't, maybe it'll take a little bit longer or something like that, but it's releasing our ability to sort of control that or to try to affect that, and focusing more on just allowing ourselves to be the example at the end of the day, right? That's the most potent way we're going to affect people anyways, if we can show up and be in integrity, right? Like, eventually they're going to come around and be like, what? And just they'll get magnetized to it,
The more and more we follow our true heart's desires, the more and more in integrity, the more in alignment, the more there is to let go of. You know, like the closer we just get, the more there is to let go of, because that journey, you know, when some people just stay in the one relationship, the one job, the one location for a lot of their life, there's less to let go of because there's less change, there's less growth. There's when we go that path, there's just more, because inevitably you meet more people and you're going to keep letting go of them, and you know, more locations, and then you get called somewhere else and you let go. It is that transience. It is, you know, allowing that to come through. And I just want to finish by opening the space for anything that's there for you to, you can ask a question or just share or reflect, that just feels like, yeah, you want to bring into the space, or presence, or ask to just feel complete around the separation.
I guess when you look at if you see this community that we've been talking about, and you know, it's a whole like microeconomy, like we said, and it's in integrity, you know, with children, and it's got the energetics of prosperity and reciprocity coded into it. It's quite self-sustaining, and it could be this sort of beacon of where we go from here. Where would you see yourself in that?
As in, kind of, what role do I play?
Yeah. If you could like kind of put yourself in that space, and what role are you playing, and how are you most alive in that sort of world?
That's a great question. You know, I don't have full clarity on it, because what I see is, you know, similar to you, maybe I see myself as a visionary and a leader. And so I've always seen this as, oh, I'm creating this. And I'm kind of in the space at the moment of meeting so many people that are also leaders and visionaries. And I actually feel like I need to let go of a part of myself to allow it to happen, to not be the leader, or to be the leader, but a co-leader. You know, where I'm come from this world of, you know, the model, if you think of it as codependency to independence to interdependence. It's like I'm in that stage of letting go of the, you know, this is even for partnership, family, this is the whole the community, of the independence part to a degree, still being a sovereign being. But yeah, what I just feel is I need to let go of something in that, because how I would answer it from my past is like, oh yeah, I see myself as the one who, you know, has got the money together to have the land, to have the retreat center, and teach, you know, invite people in and run workshops and, you know, different things, and play music. But it's like, if I genuinely tune into who I want there, there are all people that can do that in the same way. And it's not the one person running the show or facilitating the space or the best musician or whatever. And so I don't fully know what role I would play, other than being in my heart and surrendering and doing what's required. You know, I've journeyed so much that I can play the music and facilitate, and I know a little bit about permaculture. But you know, I've even seen in the past being specific roles. You know, there's the person who loves building, so they do that. There's the person who loves permaculture, so they do that. You know, everyone, the idea of empowering everyone in their genius. And maybe that's the way, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's, you know, a bit more reciprocal, or maybe there's a leader for each thing, and then, you know. So I don't have clarity on that. I feel like if I gave you some specific answer, it would be at this point in time, but that may not be what it's meant to be.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, you know, because that shows you an area to continue to explore. You know, like if we have a conscious awareness of what's for us, but still remains in the unknown. That's a perfect compass, you know. It's just like great, you know. we don't know much until we typically experience it, like I had no idea I wanted to DJ until I happened to be in the right place where it was being used as a healing modality, and then that was that was interesting. And then I thought to myself, well, this is still going to be a job. This is still going to be work. And then I actually started playing with DJ equipment and was like, oh, this is actually really fun. I'm actually manipulating music by touching it, and I can feel it, and I can move, and I can, and so there's so much of our, I feel like it's so, it's a good shift where we need to, I think, move in our culture, is to empower people to just simply be completely in love with not knowing, but yet have an inkling of like, I'm a visionary enough to see where things could be headed, or the kind of conditions that I want to be in, and to simply explore in those conditions. And the thing that's for you is going to arrive moment to moment, right?
Yeah. And I can see, I don't know if you've heard of I can't remember her name now, but the lady in China has created like this heaven on earth garden, and she has this Lizzie Chi. She has this YouTube of millions, and she just gets the food and cooks it and cooks it for her mother. And it's like what that represents. It's almost the energy of it feels like the Dalai Lama, and the Buddha's just peace, and I can feel into the energy of it's just a place where it's peaceful, where, previous to my experience in Byron, the food is growing abundantly, the bees are buzzing, all the web spiders are creating their webs, the ladybug, like the harmony of the land. There's trickling water, there's meditation. When I went to India and I went to Oroville, people
Nice.
from 50 countries meditating around this space in silence. It has that energy. I cried because it's the energy of whoever's in this community. It's not the politics, it's not the heavy roles and responsibilities. There's just a sense of here's my space, here's your space, the shared space, and I can peacefully meditate here. I can hear the trickling water. You can hear the kids running. You can go around to each other for dinner. You can, bring some bread if you grow that, or bake that. You can, and it's there's the waterfalls close, there's the ocean close, there's peace, there's love making, you can be naked and expressed, it's like that's the essence of it. And it's like I feel like a lot of communities, they're getting formed, it becomes too business, too meetings and it's like there's a way I see it forward where it's almost like you have your space, right? And they have their space, and then there's the communal space. There's not too much. It still allows that privacy. It still allows that, because when I've seen that people live really too close to each other, it's like just energetically, emotionally, I've just seen it's like then people need to contract like into their, or seclude back to their cave. It's just like, it's like even being in a share house or something. It's like and amplified. So yeah, I can. There's a part in me, I feel, and you might feel this yourself, is I know what's going to happen. It may not look like what I think it's going to look like, but it's just inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true to my heart. So if I look in hindsight through all the events of my life, it's like, oh, that's why I went to Oriole. Oh, that's why I did some permaculture. Oh, that's why I started playing some music. Oh, that's why I met that person. It's those things, which I think you'll know in you. It's like things when it's so true to God manifesting through your heart, or in essence, it's like, it'll happen. Amazing, brother. It's been such a joy to, just connect with you and just dive deep into the exploration and the depths, and just appreciate your openness and your vulnerability, and just the depths to which you consider things. I really appreciate that. And I find it quite rare in this world to meet people that really go to those depths, to consider things so deeply. And so just honoring on your hero's journey.
And it's been a really fun conversation, because you can meet me there, like you said. There's not that common. So when I do get to play in it, it's just like it's beautiful. But I also feel like it's becoming more common, and I think that's a aspect of what brings me a lot of joy. Is I know that as that continues to become more and more common in my field, it's like in the gene keys and human design chart and all the things. Like I definitely am the type of person whose soul lights up when I'm in this kind of energetic with other people, in community. Like it, yeah. So I would love to. I'm actually launching a podcast in next month called the Living Legends Podcast. I'd love to coordinate with you and have you on it and talk about your experiences in India, because I've been to India as well. But yeah, we can riff off of that. That would be really fun.
Amazing. Sounds good, brother.
Yeah.
And for anyone wanting to connect with you, I'll post your socials when this goes up. But it's Doug_Sweeney on Instagram, and he's got a free breath work there that you can do, and his book is called Heroic Growth, and he offers coaching work as well. So I'll make sure I put those links in. But thank you so much for today, brother. Much appreciated.
Thank you. It was really, really fun. Just really nourishing and